Bueno, vamos a dar paso a la mesa redonda. Esta mesa redonda la va a moderar Ana Palacio y como es tan obsesiva con el tiempo y hace muy bien, pues voy a ahorrarme un poco la introducción que tenía de ella. Todo el mundo conoce a Ana Palacio, nuestra primera ministra de Asuntos Exteriores, y ha tenido una trayectoria vinculada a la política exterior, la seguridad y relaciones internacionales. Así es que, por favor, Ana, tienes toda tu hora, ya veremos cómo nos arreglamos, por favor.
Pues muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a CEPSA, muchas gracias al Real Instituto Elcano, muchas gracias al Club Español de la Energía por haberme invitado y darme esta oportunidad. Y además yo tengo un pasado muy fuerte en la energía, yo tengo un pasado nuclear. Ahí está, en Areva. I'm going to switch into English. And I would say, as an introduction, it's great, by the way, to see you just in this key position. I think, knowing you for so many years, this is going to be fantastic, just with the opening after the COVID. So what I would say in a very brief introduction is this gas crisis, this spiking of gas prices has revealed to the public how fragile our energy mix is. In this common endeavor to fight just green gas emissions. Green gas emissions you have highlighted, and many times we forget about methane. Methane is fundamental, and then just CO2. And this is our target. Let's not just get far from this target. Whatever helps to mitigate greenhouse emissions is good. And there are no preferences. We need everything. It's not either or, it's everything. So in this context, it's great to listen to what's going on in this crossroads of diplomacy and the European Union. Why? I would highlight three topics that came in different interventions. José Juan Ruiz, Magmonian, just Boisseau. First thing, yes, the European Union is undoubtedly a standard bearer of the present global effort to transition into this non-greenhouse gases economy. Furthermore, the EU's ambition is to piece together a legal framework and a legal and action framework that will be a reference to the world. This is what we are. And it was mentioned, this just border compensating tax for CO2 tax. This is one of our signature initiatives. The title of this mission and the title of this session as well, the conference, reminds us that this diplomatic effort involves, besides the internal regulation of the European Union, the external projection of our internal policies, be it industrial, be it, of course, energy union and others. And I would say that finally, it is a driver, it's a key driver for European Union bilateral and multilateral relations. So to discuss all this, we have four perspectives that couldn't be more complementary. A vision from the European Parliament, the symmetrical perspective from Latin America, one of the key necessary allies in the world for the European Union to be successful in this endeavor. Then we will listen to a relevant opinion leader from the very active civil society community. Finally, we will listen, and in fact not finally, we will start by listening to the diplomat, the External Action Service, and this would be our first introduction. So briefly, allow me some brief housekeeping notes. First, for you, the audience, this is your session. I encourage you to send your questions through the application. I will ensure that there is enough time for us to address them. Second, I will, and this is the worst part of being a moderator, it's not just that you cannot say what you opine, but is that I will ask all the interventions to keep below 5 minutes. I will be forced to be very tough on times, and without further ado, I invite Andras Rozmer. Andras Rozmer is team leader on the external dimension of the European Green Deal in the European External Action Services. This is our diplomacy. This is the European Union diplomacy. And my question to you, Andras, is what has changed with the Green Deal? What is the new approach? How do we define our priorities in this new context? Andras, the floor is yours. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, colleagues in Spain and around the world, and excellencies. It's great to be with you. In this introductory 5 minutes, I will obviously be only able to cover some headline issues, which then we can, of course, go into detail. One important point for us, of course, to make is I work for the External Action Service. My work starts where the work of our colleagues who work on in the internal dimension finishes. So for us, life is the easiest when there is an agreement among member states of what we should do. And in that sense, in fact, life was moderately easy after the arrival of the new Commission and the goal set of the 55% reduction in the very first European Council to follow the arrival of the new Commission almost. That, of course, is now the details of the Fit for 55 package have arrived. There will be internal discussions. Not all member states will see the same line, but we have our common goal set, and that allows for our diplomacy to set a good common narrative. And I think what has changed and what has, to respond to your question, I think the approach has changed quite a lot in the last 2-3 years. And to illustrate this, in terms of what used to be just climate diplomacy, or in fact, for what used to be energy and climate diplomacy, this is now diplomacy. All of our delegations around the world, our colleagues in far-flung places, by now can no longer say, oh, this is something the experts deal with this. It's not conferences in exotic places that happen and have no relevance for their daily work. It is their daily work, energy and climate diplomacy. And I mean this, we feel very much the demand for continuous updates, trainings, backgrounds has gone up a lot. And I think that's just simply the reflection of the importance of the topic and how it is treated. Climate diplomacy, we have moved from an approach that focuses on far-flung ambition to very detailed policy engagement with a number of countries. Of course, first and foremost with the major emitters. We have defined for ourselves, together with member states, the exact things we sometimes want from countries, sometimes in a very transactional approach on what they can deliver. We have come with new initiatives that we have not done in the past, and I'm very thankful for the previous speaker to talk about the Global Methane Pledge, which of course in that sense is a big new initiative on our side that perhaps today is political, but will be turned into very practical issues across the globe. On energy diplomacy, perhaps even more, the change is even more visible. I can tell that from my personal experience, having worked in this field now for some time, from a very narrow focus of energy security and fossil fuel security, which remains important, and I'll say a word about this, we have moved into a new world of energy diplomacy. I think a lot of it is captured in a document that the foreign ministers adopted at the beginning of this year in council conclusions at the Foreign Affairs Council. And I rarely suggest reading EU documents, but that's perhaps something the audience would want to look into. In this document, for example, we capture that the chief priority of our energy diplomacy as of this year is promoting the energy transition in all its aspects. Of course, renewables, energy efficiency, hydrogen, that goes to supporting research and development. Gray areas remain, and I will not hide them, and they may come up in the discussion. Our relationship with some fossil fuels, particularly gas, is still not fully defined by our member states. So is the relationship we have with nuclear. From a European perspective, of course, every member state has its own view. But the energy transition is now our number one priority. Second, energy security, of course, remains very important. And today, this is extra important with the gas crisis that we face. But we also think about the energy security of the future, the raw materials needed for the transition, etc. Lastly, we are very aware, especially in the External Action Service, of the impact of not only climate change, the geopolitical impact, but also of what we do, the chief answer to it being the energy transition. We promote just transition work across the globe. For example, we have a new project on coal transition, experience taking it abroad. And altogether, perhaps just to conclude in a final sentence, we have now moved to a place where energy diplomacy is so entwined with all our economic and other diplomatic endeavors that, in fact, my newly founded Green Transition Division of the External Action Service is, in fact, almost part of the central decision.
Thank you. I think that from what I got, and it has been a very interesting just making clear what's there, it's the mainstreaming in all the policies of the European Union, as you have said. Nobody can hide behind saying, well, you know, this is for the experts. No, this is for everybody, and that's my first takeaway. I think that the other takeaways in the gray areas. In the European Union, sometimes we forget that the best pupil, the best country in reducing just CO2 emissions has been the United States by going from coal to gas. But that's a different discussion. So without further ado, Claudio Seebach. Claudio Seebach comes from the other side of the Atlantic, from this very important, for the European Union, just area of Iberoamerica, Latin America. Claudio is currently the executive chairman of Generadores de Chile, the trade association of electricity producers there. He has been a leading actor in the fight against climate change, responsible for the agreement for the phase out of coal and in the industry and carbon neutrality. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Anna. I'm not only across the Atlantic, I'm also on the Southern Hemisphere. So it's 7 a.m. here, and it's a beautiful spring morning. So, well, thank you very much for the invitation to the World Energy Council Spanish Committee, and I will try to contribute with a foreign perspective on this international and foreign policy dimension of the European Green Deal. As you mentioned, our association is a collection of several companies, many of them European, of very diverse portfolios, and we inherit a great European tradition, not only naturally from Spain, but also many other European countries, and we keep close ties to the old continent, so I'm really happy to be here. And also the EU is a very relevant trade partner. It's the third trade partner, and Chilean exports to the EU amount to more than $8 billion per year, mainly to Netherlands, Spain, France, Germany, but with products like copper, where we're world famous, agricultural products, and wine and cellulose. But the thing is, Chile's economy is highly dependent on fossil fuels, and that's like everyone else. In our case, 75% of our energy, not electricity, energy comes from fossils, mainly, of course, from oil. And in the power sector, to keep up with the economic growth of the last decades, we moved away from mainly being renewables-based power until reaching about 40% of electricity from burning of coal. So in the last decades, this is among the highest in the OECD. So what have been the principles behind this, and what could be to help in the questions the European Green Deal raises is the good news that we're moving away from coal very fast and investing heavily in renewables. Actually, as you mentioned, in 2018, we had an agreement between the Chilean government and the companies that run coal-fired plants, committing to full phase-out of coal by 2040. By 2025 already, we expect that 3.6 gigawatts out of the original more than 5 gigawatts will be either decommissioned or ready to be disconnected as soon as we can to do so safely. So this of course, means that in a way, and probably you've read it in the news, and it's probably the reason why I've hoped to be invited and was here invited, is that this has been really a very successful story, and we've been heavily investing in new renewables like wind and solar. 100% of everything new development and under construction is renewable. And we've committed to carbon neutrality with broad political support. And it's been a highly attractive market for renewables, according to Bloomberg or the other indexes. So, and we already reached peak emissions in the power sector around 2016, 2017. But just as Joseph McMonagle well described, we're also very worried about the current crisis and how this could affect climate action and its public support, which, as I say, in Chile still is high up. Because during the transition, we have to bridge the gap, and we will be still heavily dependent on global fossil fuels. And through the pandemic, at least the power sector has shown great resilience as we have been able to keep up at being a fundamental pillar for the sustainable recovery. We've accelerated investment in renewables, and of course, this helps out with creation of jobs. And what are the underlying principles for this? One is the openness of our economy to foreign investment. Many of it is European. Free trade agreements, like the one we have with the European Union. Low input tariffs, which allow us to bring in technology. Intense competition in our generation market. Sound public policy, also that was mentioned previously. And the long-term commitment to sustainable economic growth. In Chile, there are no public subsidies for renewables, apart, of course, from the endowment we have in massive sunshine in the Atacama, winds from the Pacific, water running from the Andes, or the heat in the volcanoes. And the renewable energy is helping many export industries to be able to become cleaner. The mining sector has been very active in its role in climate action and is switching from renewables in their operations. Solar salts, copper, and lithium are key resources for a net zero economy for renewables, and energy storage, electric mobility are a great opportunity for our mining industry. You know that we produce a third of world copper, and we have the highest lithium reserves in the world. So we also want to become a global leader in green hydrogen, just like we do with copper. So, and we also in the public sector, we've put a priority in electrification of public transport. We have 800 buses. That's the largest fleet out of China. And we just awarded last week 1,000 new electric buses. So in conclusion, in the power sector, we hope to keep moving fast from the current 45% to reach 85% renewables 2030. This will contribute like 60. This emergency gives us little time. So we believe that the path of a private sector market-based approach for the energy transition to carbon neutrality through electrification and renewable electricity in the context of sound public policy will help us. And we hope this experience can be an example for many countries, particularly developing economies, but also European economies in the context of the EU Green Deal, which face similar challenges. And we can hopefully this follows suit in our collective fight against climate change. So thank you very much, and open for questions.
Thank you for almost keeping to the time. And I would say that it was a needed voice. And I will highlight three, there are many topics to highlight, but three things. First is that in this EU diplomacy, companies have a lot to do. And this is, I mean, in Spain, it's especially true as there are many Spanish companies that are investing in Latin America in the area of energy. So this is the other branch of the diplomacy. On free trade agreements, you have highlighted it. It's great that the External Action Service is with us. We need to push Mercosur. We need to push to finalize, to get on going the Colombia trade agreement. There are many times, I mean, these are strategic for us, and in your mainstreaming of this, the importance of this policy, this is also for the bilateral or with the Mercosur agreement. You have highlighted public support. This is key. And I think this is something that has already been highlighted by McMonigan, but it's key. Unfortunately, as I say, I'm here to moderate. So, Maria Pastukhova, I hope that I haven't completely mispronounced. Maria Pastukhova is Senior Policy Advisor of E3G. It's a European think tank, and she specializes in energy diplomacy and sustainable energy finance. This is an aspect that is absolutely relevant, where the European Union is working a lot. Maria, you have the floor. My question, I mean, it's almost there.
Yes.
I would say, let's formulate it like this. How can the EU become a strong global standard and norm setter? This is what I said. The European Union has this ambition to be the referee in this area, cum actor, and how can we keep it within this global energy landscape? Maria.
Many thanks. Greetings from Berlin to all distinguished speakers and participants. And many thanks indeed for your question. It is a highly relevant one, I think, as the EU is indeed a regulatory powerhouse and is being looked upon as such by many other countries and regions. So acting on own standards and norm settings is not only arguable the most powerful tool the EU has for extrapolating its Green Deal abroad, but also means to ensure an orderly and sustainable transition in the neighborhood, including the eastern and southern neighborhood, which is by no means uncontested, where we see China is pushing own energy and finance standards within the now Green BRI. We see the US that's been leading on standard setting in many areas, including efficiency in industry for years. And now it's actually time for the EU to step in, starting with 4 things. One of them has been mentioned many times already. It's the Global Methane Pledge initiative, and the EU has very high leadership potential there, given its own ambitious methane agenda. So I won't go into in detail, but the next and arguably the most important area for the EU to act upon is sustainable finance. Indeed, the EU's budget is the strongest tool it has to act upon on Green Deal commitments, and acting on sustainable finance can help strengthen relationship with partner countries in the global south and spur clean economy transition in countries which are otherwise not able to follow the EU's pace of decarbonization. Most importantly, the fossil fuel producing countries and partners of the EU, but also the least developed countries in the global south. Acting on sustainable finance can also help unlock private finance, much needed to scale up clean energy transition in emerging markets and developing economies. And it offers opportunities for the European business and finance sector, of course. And last but not least, it can help substantiate the multilateral offers on the table in which the EU strives to play a leading role, one of them being the Build Back Better World initiative, B3W, and also provide a backbone to the own nascent initiative, the Global Gateway. The EU taxonomy is a strong framework, and it is certainly worth considering whether and how it can be applied to private and public finance abroad. As financial markets are global, the EU taxonomy will have implications for the business globally as well, so voluntary alignment with the EU taxonomy abroad would potentially unlock green finance for non-EU actors as well in third countries, maybe even delivering an additional push to the public financial institutions on the ground. So, what does the EU need to be able to use this potentially very powerful tool? There are several things. I will mention a couple of them for the shortage of time. First, the EU needs to lead the push for the establishment of the so-called global standard within the International Platform on Sustainable Finance, which it is already doing. and find a common ground with other major economies and emerging taxonomies in other regions. Second, another major task would be to take the US on board, which is currently not part of this international dialogue. And the current US administration should be actually open to discussing joining the initiative, given their ambition to become a global leader themselves. But at the very least, the EU and the US should consolidate their efforts to push for more ambition on sustainable finance ahead of the G20 summit this year, but also for taking place next year, including Clean Energy Ministerial, Ministry of Innovation, G7 and G20. And also internal coordination is of course needed between existing and emerging initiatives such as NDICI and the Global Gateway, as well as the clarity of where the energy transition finance pot actually comes from and whether it is aligned with the EU sustainable finance regulations. Finally, the EU should intensify cooperation efforts to establish enabling regulatory frameworks for clean energy finance in the partner countries of the Global South, where currently there are none, to unlock private finance and prepare a support offer for also smaller enterprises otherwise struggling with voluntary reporting on taxonomy or similar frameworks. Finally, I would like to very quickly mention two further important areas where the EU has real leadership potential within the Green Deal. First, one is energy and product efficiency, as the EU has one of the world's regions best minimum product efficiency standards and labeling regimes, and European manufacturers are leaders in all major product classes that can deliver real progress on global energy efficiency goals. But compared to other major economies such as the US and China, the EU has done relatively little internationally, and stepping up on efficiency diplomacy would also deliver a co-benefit to the overall goals of the Green Deal, as it would make a reduction of fossil fuel use easier to achieve. Finally, the EU has the unprecedented model of a subcontinental and integrated power market, and as electrification and integration of power markets will be a backbone of an increasingly decarbonized global economy, the EU must act upon it within the Green Deal. And a lot of other regions are looking towards the EU's experience as they look for own solutions, and the EU is well advised to strengthen its image as a kind of a power market blueprint within the Green Deal. I will stop here and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping with the time to the second. And frankly, I think that this idea that the European Union has to be the blueprint for this Build Back Better that you have highlighted is the big message for this Green Deal diplomacy. I fully concur that the South that you have called, this is where things will happen or not happen. And there at the COP, I think that we need to reach a realistic. I'm looking at Secretary McMonaghan because you highlighted two conclusions. I think that from Maria, we have to take this third conclusion unless we reach a reasonable approach, not for the HIPEX, for the poorest countries in the world, but for these middle of the road developing countries that will, as I can quote Minister Rakesh of India telling me, we will burn whatever we have. For us, this is our priority. We understand the challenges of the greenhouse emissions. We will do what we can, but our first priority is development. Maria, thank you. Last but not least, we are speaking about this projection of the European Union as a reference, as a regulatory power in this area. And we have Javi López. Javi López is an MEP from the PSC-PSOE, a Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, S&D, in the European Parliament since 2014. He's co-chair of the Euro-Latin American Parliamentary Assembly. Again, the importance of this dialogue, of this cooperation. He's a member of the Committee of Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, and his political activity at the European Parliament also includes being a member of the presidency of the Party of the Socialists, of the European Socialists, and president of the European Socialist Environment, Climate Change and Energy Network. So my question to you, Javi López, and with you are you are closing. So having your vision from the European Parliament and 5 minutes in the European Parliament, I have the experience, is an eternity. Many reports do not get for the presentation more than 5 minutes, even less than that. My question would be, the European Green Deal is slowly taking shape through a series of laws, policy packages, and action plans. It has become a kind of policy fundamentals of the Build Back Better. And this was also mentioned that it's mainstreamed in the different policies of the Union. At the same time, it has profound geopolitical dimension. So what does the European Green Deal imply from your perspective, from the legislator in Europe? What does this imply for our relations with other countries?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share with my colleagues this table, and especially with our moderator, with Palacio, our former minister on foreign affairs. Well, it implies it has a long list of implications for our foreign policy. No, I will try to be brief and especially schematic. First of all, in my view, will alter the European trade and investment partners in terms of energy, basically. No, EU imported more than 320 billion worth of energy products in 2019, and more than 60% of EU imports from Russia were energy products, basically. And a massive reduction in this flow will restructure the EU relationship with key energy suppliers. Russia, Algeria, and Norway, no? And Europe's exit from fossil fuel dependency will adversely affect a number of regional partners and may even destabilize them economically and politically. And this is something that we should try to look closer. Also, my second item, it will be we have the opportunity through the European Green Deal to be more autonomous in terms of geopolitical dependencies. The decarbonization of our economy could imply less dependencies from these export fossil fuel big actors in the world. No? Third, Europe accounts currently around the 20% of global crude oil imports. And theoretically, the impact on the global oil market will be depressing prices and reducing the income of the main exporters. This, like in the long term, this will be the economic consequences and obviously with geopolitical implications. Fourth, a greener Europe will be more dependent on imports of products and raw materials, no, that serve as input for clean energy and clean technology. This is something that we should try to also design in terms of future. For example, rare earth elements of which China is the largest producer are essential for battery production. And this is something that China is designing quite well, trying to ensure and guarantee their lines of production, and especially the import of other countries, especially like in Latin America, as Palacio mentioned, and Africa. Europe could remain an importer of energy, but that energy should be need to be green, such as green hydrogen produced in sun-rich parts of the world, such as the Middle East and north of Africa. But also it should be an opportunity for the south of Europe, to create in a bigger scale production of green energy using our sound resources. And also like without the dependency of imports. 5, the Green Deal will have an impact of Europe's international competitiveness, no? And we should try to adapt to this. If European firms take on regulation-related costs that their foreign competitors do not bear, they will become less competitive, both domestically and abroad. And this is something to follow close. And we will have to design a carbon border tax, and this also will have impact in the energy. We should try to design a legal instrument that is like oriented to our green goals, protecting our industry, but being fair with the trade with the rest of the world. No? And the last elements, the EU 5 element, the EU will need to develop new trade and investment agreements. This is also something that also our moderator mentioned. You know, a new models of financial and technical assistance, trying to focus on energy and the green transition, and a new approach to international diplomacy. No, especially the relations with the United States and China are key in this goal. Also, a new orientation with the relations with the Gulf and Russia will be needed if we really have this decarbonized goal in 30 years. These are my key message, but at least like the decarbonization will change everything, but also foreign policy and geopolitical balance of powers.
Thank you, and I think that this is a conclusion that meets what the External Action Service, what Andras told us. It's that in the end, the mainstreaming of this, of this goal of the European Union, of this vision of the world by the European Union, is going to permeate all our policies, and in particular foreign policy. You have mentioned relations with our southern neighbors of the Mediterranean, with our eastern neighbors. That's one of the key takeaways. I didn't mention, and I think it's fundamental, that you have mentioned it, and Seebach also mentioned it, is this idea that Green Deal is not just the production of energy, it's also rare earths, it's also lithium. This is fundamental, and this, I think, again, we need to do some kind of pedagogy with the public opinion. The public opinion has to understand and buy all this area. The third very important takeaway is that you say, and you're right, we will not depend on depend that much on imports of oil and gas, but we will be importing green power, green electricity. And also I would say hydrogen, green hydrogen. I read not a long time ago an article that was projecting Morocco and Chile as producers of green hydrogen for export. We have seen a big important project of using the energy in the Congo River to also produce hydrogen and import. And this, by the way, it's also the Gulf that is interested in this development. So we see the Gulf, until now we have seen the Gulf as oil and gas producers. I think, and McMonaghan just mentioned that, but I think that we need to, again, understand and make the public opinion is that this is much more complex, that on the front line, there is an effort, an interest, vision, a projection of oil and gas producing countries to also be present and have an important say in this decarbonization and methane control. any question or any comment, I give you a couple of minutes to any of you if you want. If not, I open the floor for questions. If there are, I know that we have a secretary of the session that is organizing the question that we are receiving. I have one, and I will start by Seebach, because in my opinion, Claudio, our relationship is very important, but I would like you to elaborate a bit on what is the regional, if there is a regional in Latin America, if there is a regional, and the dimension that this has with the Pacific policies that you are that you are launching in the Pacific dimension of your countries. So, Claudio.
Thank you, Anna. Well, Latin America is a very big region, and you're all aware of that. But despite that, in energy terms, we're, at least in the case of Chile, pretty not integrated with the rest. Well, it's in a way we are connected with Argentina. Argentina has large reserves of natural gas, but for mostly geopolitical reasons and internal political reasons, they've underinvestment in the last decades in gas, and so we're not depending on natural gas coming from Argentina, but rather from the global markets, which comes back to the fact that we're very worried on the global disruption of markets. But we are very open to the Pacific. As you mentioned, we have this whole coast, and we are very connected economically. Of course, China, big, great partner, the US, the Pacific Alliance with Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and of course, partners across the Pacific like Australia and New Zealand. So the Pacific as a whole builds up an economic group that is very relevant. And of course, it's relevant both for trade, but also for the whole investments that we've received from countries, both from China, from the US, Australia. And despite being on the other side, on the Atlantic, Chile can be and has been an entry port for Europe and other countries for the region. And we see that with European companies having their bases in Chile for investing in Latin America. I think our track record and policy, being an OECD country for more than a decade, and also being very open to migration and also to foreign investment, helps us to be a base, despite not being as integrated as we could be in Latin America. But just to end, I think for renewables, and if we want to keep with the pace, what we need is to integrate more and more Latin America, just as you and Europe will have to do, to balance out the different regions in terms of renewables. So that's what I think is where we should head to.
Which, Claudio, is important. I mean, we ourselves in the European Union, we have to work a lot with our grid in order to take full advantage of the renewables, of the intermittent renewables. Maria, I have a question for you that came from the audience. And the question is, what do you do about the taxonomy? Where is this going? The taxonomy did not address nuclear. Well, it did not address gas either. Gas has gone from being clearly a transition, long-term transition solution to evaporating and thin gas. What is your perspective on this important part for establishing green financing, this idea of the taxonomy? How will it go?
Thanks for this question. Yeah, it's a relevant one, and I didn't want to go into the detail as this is also a sensitive one, I'm sure you know. And maybe our speakers from the European Union can add something on this, but I think we must differentiate between what the taxonomy can do within the European Union and what the taxonomic potential can do, aligning the private and maybe even public finance abroad, and internationally, being very very detailed on nuclear and gas might be in a short term a stumbling block in achieving an agreement with countries such as China, such as India, and many other countries that are on this international platform for sustainable finance, working towards a global normal or global standard for sustainable finance. It certainly makes sense to focus on other issues right now to get this kind of a base of starting from which the countries can help develop and strengthen the global sustainable finance regime. Taxonomy internally is a very sensitive issue, and I think it is also not the final version that we're seeing now. So some developments might take place.
My question was willingly provocative, and your response was extremely good. Andras, Rozmer, where are we in our bilateral relations with the United States? We started with this administration, with this Biden administration, with a lot of projects. Where are we? Because this also seems to have just languished a bit.
Thank you. That's also a very good question indeed. In the previous administration, the key forum for EU-US energy relations, which was the EU-US Energy Council, was indeed left a little bit on the back burner, both on its high-level format, which happened only once in all throughout the Trump presidency, and its lower-level format, where most of the work takes place, of course, in working levels. There has been a major uptick in relations over the last 8-9 months. To the degree, in fact, I think now we are at the moment where everybody says that this we need to make sure that we don't create too many new structures and create too much new streams that overlap. But the EU-US Energy Council has been highly invigorated. Of course, there's an energy and climate stream also in the new Tech and Trade Council, under which there is specifically a work strand on technology. We are talking with the US on energy security issues. We are thinking about establishing potentially even a separate work stream on energy diplomacy, which I would perhaps in here define as in common narratives across the globe in toward bilateral or in multilateral fora. It's really a blooming relationship for the moment. Of course, there has been a lot of pent-up demand. There will be issues where we not necessarily see eye to eye. Our US colleagues don't have same views on CBAM as we do, but it's clearly there is an opportunity there with this administration that I think has been grasped and will.
We keep this. There is an opportunity with this administration. Let's push for it. My last question, Javi, and this is another important, in my opinion, and you are extremely well placed to answer it. There is going to be a new German government. It probably be what everybody understands, that it will be led by the socialists with the presence of the Green Party, important presence, and the liberals. In your opinion, what is going to be the repercussion on the transit of all these policies through the European Parliament?
Thank you very much. First of all, it seems that we will have a new German government really committed with the new European Green Deal and the Green Agenda. This is the first point. I would add that the last one, and especially the passed on during the last 2 years, also by the European Commission, led by a German conservative president, it was clear also in the same direction. But we are sure that the new German government will be really committed with this green agenda and the decarbonization. Now we made the easy part, decide the targets. Basically, the targets for 2030 and the target of neutral climate economy in 2050. Now it comes the difficult part. It's to do it, no, and to do it fast, and also to do it avoiding an eco backlash, no. And what it means this, and this is something that I think the new Chancellor of Germany will have in mind. It's we need to decarbonize our economy, and for this, it's basically you will need to change our industry, our forms of energy, our mobility, and our housing. These four elements. It's changed the structure of our economy and also of our society. To do it, we should be fair in this transition, no? And trying to use mechanism of compensation, first of all, ensuring the three elements that probably will have cost in this transition. It's like for jobs, for the industry, obviously, and for the consumers. No, these three elements we will be present for ensure like a social transition, and this is basically, I think, the message lead for the new Chancellor, potentially the new Chancellor of Germany.
And with this, we close our session. Allow me just to say, picking up on where Secretary McMonaghan's left it, that we aim at COP26 that will start in a few days, and what we understand and what has come clear from your intervention is A, the methane, raising awareness and targeting methane, financing also this idea of technological and finance contribution of to these struggling economies that cannot just have the choice either development or compliance with the gas. The third very important topic that emerged once and again is this idea that public opinion has to buy it. In the end, this is about public opinion, and again, it has to be explained that it cannot be either jobs or climate. No, we need to be better at that. And in this, de-ideologize. Sometimes we stick to renewables. And if the goal is green gas emissions, let's go for everything that diminishes green gas emissions. Last but not least, the European Union has an important role to play. Sometimes in conferences, young people ask me, but our world was the world of yesterday. What is, and I say, no. The European Union, we Europeans, I mean, you young people, you have an asset, which is your life expectancy. You can do many, many things, and we can contribute in a different world, in different contexts, but we can and we will contribute. And this just embracing it in the diplomacy of the Green Deal is a fantastic, and congratulations for whoever was the one that imagined this as the topic for our discussions. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Ana. Verdaderamente un modelo como moderadora, tanto por cómo has llevado el debate como por las conclusiones finales.